Dave from David's to-do list. My to-do list, that's stupid. Let's try again. Hi, this is Dave from David's to-do list. This is my steering column that I've modified to work in the 65 here behind me. I've removed the old steering with the steering box and the drag links and all that to go across and replaced it with a rack and pinion. In order to do that, I had to modify my steering column. I had to cut it off, fabricate a plate here that bolts to the firewall, add a bearing in here. You can see there's a couple of universal joints that go down, connect the linkage down to the rack. So I'm going to show how I built this. I'm going to go through it and step by step pretty much and show how it's done, or how I did it anyways. And, started out with a template. Starter template, kind of trace the rubber gasket goes in there, and here's the old metal part that covered it, 2-piece. That evolved into this template. I've got this bearing to support my drive shaft. So once I was happy with the setup here, then I transferred it, made it, this template's an 1/8 inch, 5/32 smaller around the outside, to so I could cut this out with a plasma cutter. So now this is the inside of the car. I'll show it to you installed on there. But this goes like so. And then the shaft comes through here, obviously. Now on the inside, I need to attach the steering column to something here, because I cut it off. It used to go onto the steering box. I don't know if you can see it there or not. So I made this template, same as this, clears this. This is on the inside of the car. And then I'm going to bolt it back in there again. And then this is going to get welded on the end of here. And then bolt right on there. The same bolts that hold that bearing are going to hold this column in place. That's the plan. It's awful tight here though, on the side where the nuts are. It's going to be tough to get a socket on there. I'm going to see how much clearance I have in there, but it's not much. And these are carriage bolts. I could replace it with a standard nut, I'm sure, but I like the carriage bolt look on the outside. It looks clean. So I'm going to see what I can do getting this installed, getting it tacked on there, see if I got enough room. Get the column bolted back up. I took it apart yesterday and removed the shifter. I'm going to see, I don't know if they have them or not. It seems like I remember seeing it somewhere. They have like a blank column I could get, or I could get one off a standard car, or not a standard car, but a floor shift car. Maybe it would have this without the thing for the automatic shift linkage. And you can see where that mounts on the firewall, where the old one was, obviously. And then on the inside, this is what we've got. So this is the plate I'm going to tack this steering column to, which will bolt on here just like that. Probably going to have to go with bolts, or put a clearance pocket here so I can get a wrench on that nut. I might possibly do that. I'm not sure. I got to trim this angle just a hair. Feels like I got to take about 1/8 of an inch off the top of this angle here, so it'll sit a little better on there. I want to make sure I'm in the center of the adjustment here too. This slides a little bit. There's a little slot here that locates it on the tab. I want to make sure I'm in the middle of my adjustment there, just in case when I put the brake pedal and stuff back in, everything lines up and adjusts. Taking that little cut off the back of here. about 1/8 of an inch off of here to nothing. Okay, back under here. You can see how close that nut is to that. I wouldn't be able to get a socket on there or turn the nut. So I'm going to put some clearance in here. I've got it marked. I scribed a little line here. It's probably hard to see, but so I know where my clocking location is with this sitting in here. So I'm going to put some clearance on the end of there so I can get a ratchet, probably a ratchet box end wrench or something on the end of there, so I can tighten up them nuts. And these will be nylocks when I'm done. So that's the plan. Well, let's see what happens. So my plan is to drill this semi-circle out of there with a hole saw, which isn't probably going to be great, but I think we can make it happen if we're gentle with it. Let's see. Looking pretty good so far. Silicone on there. Not bad. Well, this side didn't go quite as well, but I don't think it's not terrible. We can fix that. Still have plenty to get that bent over and clean her up. It'll be all right. No biggie. Cool. Almost like new. Let's see if it fits. There we go. It looked like I took quite a bit out of there, which I did, but I mean, now you can get like a nut driver in there. I actually sized it for the ratcheting wrench. Yeah, you can get it in there. So that worked out pretty well. Obviously I'm going to finish welding that. I want to check my fit here. Make sure there's no surprises. Here is the pretty much finalized new steering column setup. Tap these holes, and I'm also going to put nylocks on the inside. A little safety assurance. Got the bearing in here. See, turns nice and smooth. And then I have to attach this on here yet. I'm not sure what I'm going to do there, if I'm going to do a roll pin. I'm not sure yet. I should have got probably a D like this. Double D. And and then ground the flats on the shaft, and I could have locked it down like this. But I believe if I put a roll pin through there, and I might even weld it too. I'm going to ask some questions first before I do that. But here's my relief I put in so I could get to the bolts. Works well. Get a ratchet wrench in there. Get a nut driver. As you can see, it was real tight before. You couldn't get you wouldn't be able to get maybe an open end wrench, but I don't even know if the nut would have turned. It was like right up against it when it was on the flat. So just got to give it some paint, and then figure out my final length of my steering shaft. I don't know exactly yet what I'm going to do, if I'm going to change that or I'm going to change any of this or not. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I think I'm just going to try to go find the blank cover for that, for a floor shift. Got a snowstorm coming in today. It's just starting to snow now, so that'll be fun. Let's see the steering knuckle down here. I don't have the steering column in right now. I'm going to pull that plate back off of there. I want to add this sleeve. This was actually connected to the automatic shifter, but it's also a protection for the shaft as it goes down through there, down through the center, and it protects the wires. I don't want the wires to chafe from the steering shaft. So I'm going to figure out how to mount this in there. Still have room for my bearing. Got to shorten this tube up here because it's hitting the collar here where you lock the shaft onto this bearing. Yep. Okay, that's all the way in there. As you can see, that's where I cut it off at. I didn't realize that was in there when I cut this off. There's the piece I cut off the end. And then this was in there. That's the spring for when you pull your lever for the automatic shift. So I gotta cut this back. I'm gonna cut it square. Or am I gotta figure out how it's gonna sit against here. I think I'm just gonna cut it back here a little ways. I think I'm gonna drill 3 holes with like set screws or something, or maybe run it in and tack it to that tube. Not sure yet. Can't really use this. That's what was in there. But I think if I locate it on 3 places and just tack weld it, or just screw it in and put a lock nut on it. I don't know. It's pretty thin. We'll see. Figure something out here. Whoops. I want to crush the tube. Okay. Oops, I still got to take a little more off there. Whoop, that ain't right. Let's see here, what do we got going on? I forgot this collar here. I measured from this instead of the collar. Pushed it in, so let's try again. Bearing obviously has to go at quite an angle here to square it up with the shaft coming through there. I got to get the shaft, run it down through there. I don't even know where it's at. Must be in. So I just want to make sure when I put that tube in there that it's centered up so it doesn't rub. You see it's laying on there now. Looks like my bearing might be a hair above center. Just want to make sure I can keep that tube in the center. Still get in here to my lock pins, and screws, set screws, and hold that in the middle. The plan is, it's hard to see in there, but to hold that tube in the center, I'm gonna go with like 3 holes, and I'm gonna take a nut and tack weld it to that inside tube, so where my screw goes through, I can thread it into that nut. Then I'll just cut my bolt so it's just the right length, so when they're all 3 of them are tight, it holds that tube in the center. I thought about just reaching in there and tack welding that, but if I ever had to get it out of there for some reason, it'd be hard to get out, so I think this will work better. About 2 inches. And I get something to wrap around there so I can get a straight line. If the edges match up and it's around there, it should be pretty straight. There's one, and then I'll do a couple more down here so they're equally spaced. Smart, use this piece of paper, wrapped it around there, then I can get a measurement from this end of that line, and then just divide that into 3s. So that should be pretty close right there. Got one on the end, got one there, and there. So there's the one. There's one. And there's one. I can get in there and drill. So I'll drill my 3/4 inch holes, locate the nuts on the inside part, get a nice center drill. See what this center drill measures. Yep, it's 1/4 inch. I'll just run it right through. Trying to eyeball towards the center of the shaft. Clean this up. Tack the nuts on there. Why I got that out of there, should have 2 nuts on there probably. I'm actually having a hard time finding 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch nuts. Normally I have tons of them. Let's see what it does. There we go. Okay. I've got it pretty much centered right now. Oops, I got to back that screw out a little bit, sticking through. I'll do that. And then make sure the shaft goes through the center of the bearing. So the tube, it was off center a little bit like this. So I'm going to bring these 2 up a hair. See how that looks. Kind of hard to see in there, but that looks pretty pretty good. See, I guess I could take this plate off. Maybe I could see better with just the bearing on there. Try that. Can't really see any better. But that looks pretty good to me. Looks good. I'm going for it. Just square up those nuts on there where I can get it, where I can tack it. Look good. I'll just put one little tack on each one of those nuts. And then back the screws out, pull the whole works out. I can go over and weld it a little bit better. Just take a little tack and get in there. Ooh. Barely tacked on there. Just barely. It's hard to reach in there. I'll give them a couple more good tacks. Broke that one off. One came off. Put the other two back in. It's going to take a little farting around. It was fun, of course. Okay, got it that time. There we go. Definitely need a ground. I gotta take about 400 off of that. It's kind of painful watching me try to get those in there, so I didn't film that, but I couldn't get the lock washers. There's just not enough thread there with the lock washer. So, but by the time those are all tight in there, I don't think they're going anywhere because they kind of wedge against each other, getting them in there. So I'm not worried about that falling out of there, that's for sure. Making sure there's nothing that can hit the steering. So I'm gonna get that clutch pedal hooked back up, all the linkage hooked back up, and check for clearance on that steering. I'll quadruple check that before I drive it. Make sure there's no way with the clutch in or out or anything that it could possibly get hung up on there. Looks like you got pretty good clearance around everything. Looked a little close yesterday when I first looked at it, but now that the pedal's hooked up, it doesn't look too bad. Definitely get a finger in between there, no problem. I'll push the clutch in. that steering goes, this is just a straight diameter here, and the shaft is. So I think I'm going to drill a hole through here and put a bolt through right through the shaft and universal joint there, just to solid mount it, so there's no question, no chance of it coming apart or slipping. The shaft's long right now, it's sticking up in the steering column. See, I got quite a bit sticking out here. I'll have to put the steering wheel on there and get it set, the height set correctly, and then I can get a final cutoff length on my steering shaft. I'm going to take this knuckle or universal off of the steering. Go. Has a slot where that bolt goes through. I got to do the same thing on the other shaft. They're different sizes, so it only goes on there one way. See, the double D shaft fits in this side, does not fit in this side. So here was a little piece that was in there when I got it. I bought it used, never had any fluid ran through it, but just been mocked up, I believe. So you can see the relief you need to get your screw through there. That's more than you need. Just has to fit this screw. So what I'm going to do is I've laid it out in here and I've marked my location flush with the inside. Make sure there's plenty of clearance there for the knuckle to roll through. It's never going to reach that far, but so I've marked it, and I thought of several different ways I could do it. I thought about grinding it. I thought about actually putting a radius on the end of the grinder with a stone and using that, but I don't think it's going to be that hard. It's not that much material to take out, so I'm just going to use a round file. I got a couple different round files here. Yeah, start it with this one, nice fine one. It's metric, but it's like a 1/4 inch bolt. Goes through there. Try a little larger diameter here. Ooh, almost. Camera's kind of in the way. Almost. Take a little bit more of this bigger one. There it goes. Very little play, just enough clearance to get it through there. That's all you need. I'm sure when I do my final install, I'll put some Loctite on there. Pretty simple. Came out just about flush. There it goes. That goes through there. That's just snug. Now I should be able to get my final it's right up against that bearing. Might be able to bring this one in a little bit. Give me just a little clearance there. There, it slid down just a hair. Gives me a little gap up here at the top. I don't want. That's just snug to hold it in place. Okay. Yeah, we'll go 1/16 from the bearing to where the shaft gets cut off. That'll be about flush here. There we go. That spring. I left a little bit on there. You can see a little bit sticking out right there. Now, I guess it's time to get my hole drilled in here. I've got my alignment here. I was going to make a fixture out of something and hold this, but I think my best bet is to just put a little tack weld right here. That'll hold it in place, and I can clamp the shaft in the vise on the drill press and get my center here and then drill through everything. And I got a grade 5 bolt here. Looks like the width is just right, so the shoulder will be all the way through, and then put a lock nut or something on there. I just got to find my center here, get the shaft clamped in there. It looks pretty close. I think we're gonna go for it right there. Of course, would have been smarter to lock that before I drilled it, but you know. So here's about a 215 drill. I'll go through there with. A dreamer. Perfect. Drilling a reamer. 1/4 inch. Should get me a nice clean hole. Oh, Jesus, until I do that. Okay. Oh, nice. Just into that radius hair. See if I can find a little end mill or something I can make a little clearance. Just a little flat spot on there. Looks pretty good. Cut that spot weld off. That's where I had it tagged. It goes through. Let's see how, if I reverse it. Boy, it looks pretty close. Oh, it's so close. That would go if I tapped it a little bit. Yeah, there it goes. Dropped right in. Looks like that might rub though. Think it out quite well enough. Looks like the nut's gonna rub on that bearing. Because of the angle that I'm sitting at here, as that comes down around the bottom, it hits this flange on this bearing holder that lets that bearing pivot in there. I didn't even think of that, which makes me mad, but so I have a couple options. Roll pin maybe. I'd rather have a mechanical, I mean, I don't know if a roll pin could somehow come out of there. Not sure. I could tack it in the end, like flush on each side. That's a possibility. I could also thread this with a Allen
set screw and thread it all the way through everything. We'll go like 5/16 or something. Or this flange isn't doing anything down here. It's not holding anything because the bearing's way in there. I could remove some of this bottom flange on here that you can see right here and allow that to clear. I'm not sure. I think I might pull it out of there and take a better look at it and see. Yeah, mark that bearing. Glad I did. See where the bearing is, where the bearing was sitting, and I put a little center line on there. Let's get this lined up just like it was in the car, obviously. So as this comes around, it's going to hit down here on the bottom, both. So this part of the flange doesn't look to me like it's really doing anything, because the bearing's being pinched everywhere else. It's not even touching the bearing there. So it looks like I could take that piece off there. As I thought about it for a few minutes, and I'm trying to put that bearing. It's like a pillow. It's not a pillow block. I don't know, that bearing retainer. Put it on the inside, underneath the steering column. So that flange might be far enough away. I've flipped the bearing around too and put the set screws on the outside. I'm going to try it and see. There it goes. Looks like that's going to do it if everything else works out on the inside. I think that is going to work. I flipped that bearing around. You can see the collar's on the inside again. I think that's going to give me enough room. There we go. Feels pretty good. Did a little recording with my phone so I can see what's going on, because I can't see it. And I shortened up the end on there. It was just hitting the end of the universal joint, so we got it cleared out now. I had to take about 1/8 of an inch off each one. And oh yeah, nice and smooth. Got a little squeak in there, but the steering feels nice and smooth. Lunchtime. 65 there behind me. I worked on it a little bit yesterday. I put the headers in there, just set them in there and make sure there was no clearance problems around those, which there doesn't appear to be. Looks like I've got pretty good clearance. Misses that bolt by 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3/16. No gasket on here though, no gasket yet. But I still want to, up in here, I want to pull that plate back out that holds the steering. If I'm going to go with the carriage bolts, I have to, since how I put that in there the other way, and there's a flange on both sides of that now because of my clearance issues with my bolt. That bearing retainer is now sandwiched in between those two. When I pull that off, I'll show it better. But I gotta, if I'm gonna use the carriage bolts, I gotta file a square opening in one end or the other, whatever way I'll probably run the carriage bolt in from the outside. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Here's my bearing and the plate that it mounts onto. And it used to mount on the outside like this. So
the carriage bolt went through the flange like so and kept it from turning like it's supposed to do. But now, because of my clearance problem with my bolt through the shaft, I have to have this on the inside. So what I have to do is I have to make these holes out here square on the plate so that the carriage bolt will sit in here and go flush and not turn. So that's what I'm going to try doing right now. You can see what material I got to take out around the hole, so I'm just going to scribe it. Oh yeah, you can see it pretty well. I got a small round one. I can take some of the material out, get it close to the corner, then I think I can get this square one in there and finish it. Oh, almost. There, got it. Almost. It'll draw in there tight, obviously. It's pretty close, which is good. It won't spin. You see there's square holes now, square-ish. They both go in, won't turn. Make it easier to mount this up. Just a little deburring. That worked out well. Got the carriage bolts back in there. I think it looks neater with the carriage bolts on this side. And it's easier to tighten them up. Obviously, you don't need two people to do it. So that's in there. I also put the headers in there. I might have mentioned that before, just making sure there's no clearance problems. Everything looks pretty good. Everything looks pretty smooth. I'll turn that steering wheel. Everything looks nice and smooth. It's all the way to the left. It's all the way to the right. 1, 2, that should be about the middle. So that should pretty much be done, other than dimpling the shafts where the set screws go. Should be pretty much ready to go back together.